How many of you feel like you never have enough time to do anything well? Like you're constantly moving back and forth between all the things and can't give any one thing the attention that it needs? Well, guess what? It is draining your battery.
Welcome to another episode of This Was Supposed to Be Easy.
We've had these conversations on at least 1,000 car rides and now maybe even a few airplane rides, and thought it might be time for other people to join us. This is Cheryl.
And my name's Amy. And today we're coming to you fresh from an event we just attended in Washington, D.C. That's right. We did a thing. We got on a plane, reserved a hotel, and participated in the WOHASU Women's Harnessing Gallup Insights for Women's Workplace Well-Being and Success.
So I've been following WOHASU, which is the World Happiness Summit, for several years now. Actually, since I participated in my Applied Positive Psychology certification program back in 2020. And I have been looking for the opportunity to participate in one of their live events. A few weeks ago, I received an email about this particular event and showed it to Amy. The focus on women and the focus on well-being were key factors that stood out to and spoke to both of us. And before the conversation was over, we were registered and making plans. The decision was easy and fast. And I think I speak for both of us when I say that there were and are no regrets. The name of this podcast is This Was Supposed to Be Easy. And by virtue of the fact that there is Gallup data on women's workplace well-being, and there was an event with a panel of female identifying leaders gathered to actually talk about it, confirms that most things are not as easy as we had hoped. Let me give you one quick example of that data. After stating that women's wellness impacts generations, I just want you to think about that statement for a second. Karen Guggenheim, who is the founder and CEO of WOHASU and the World Happiness Summit, made that statement. And again, she said, women's wellness impacts generations. So after sharing that, she also added that 51% of women report feeling stressed a lot. And 42% of women shared that they worry a lot of the day. That's almost, and in some cases, more than half of women are talking about feeling stressed a lot and worrying a lot. We wear many hats, and those hats don't sit on our heads independently of each other. If we are worried a lot of the day, that worry and that stress is going to impact our health, our performance in school or at work or in leadership, and it's going to impact our families. And that is a huge space for generational impact.
So today we want to share a few key points of impact that made it hard for us to try and wait to tell you all this information. We tried as we were walking back to our hotel. We tried not to talk about it before we went and got lunch. But we have, of course, let a little bit sneak out. But we got back to the hotel and we wanted to jump on and record our initial conversation. And we want you to be a part of that. We also really want to highly encourage you to listen to the full panel of the WOHASU meeting, and you can do so. You can see the link in our crib notes so you can have access to that. But we also want to give credit to the panel members who so successfully grabbed our attention and shared their insights with us. So in addition to Karen Guggenheim, they include Kristen Berry, who's the Director of Hiring and Analytics for Gallup, Ileana Ron Levy, who is the Manager Director of Gallup, Swati Sharma, who's the Editor-in-Chief and Publisher for Vox, and Dr. Ella Washington, who's founder and CEO of Elevate Solutions.
I have to say that it might be hard to key in on just a few concrete factors or takeaways. Like Amy said, we literally had to zip our lips as we were walking and eating because we just wanted to talk about so many of the things. But for the sake of exploring these things that we heard with each other and with you, our community, we are going to do our best today to limit it to just a couple of key points. I'm going to start with this one. I believe that a lot of the data shared and the lived experience of the panel members that shared them with us pointed to the essential step of reaching managers. And I want to say right now that this can be a manager role in the workplace, but I would argue that this kind of role exists in many groups that are not workplace related. I'm pretty sure you have a manager in your family. You have managers in your community organizations, faith-based organizations. This type of role exists all over. So please be very general in thinking about how this might apply to you and to your lived experience. Anyway, what I wanted to say about reaching managers is that we need to think of these manager people and positioning them to be the support system for any workplace or lifestyle well-being effort. So one of the pieces of data that was shared with us was that 70% of the employee experience is based on the manager. When you think about it, managers know more about the opportunities that exist within the workplace, which might be the programs that are available through HR and those types of opportunities. And they also have contact directly with the people who those supports and programs are supposed to serve. We heard that there is a crazy number of well-being programs and services that are paid for by companies and organizations and then are not actually utilized. And this could be because they're actually unknown by the employee groups, or it could be that the people don't know how to access them. And the flip side of that is that it could also be that they are not actually what is needed or actually what is helpful. Either way, a manager has more of an ability to have a pulse of the employees and to be able to ask them more specific questions. And they have more opportunities to influence the well-being services that are offered. It is a manager or leader who can prioritize a culture of well-being. They can make it okay and even attractive to access these resources. They can model by using the resources themselves or using the language provided in the resources. They can describe their experiences in conversations that are having. They can make well-being visible, acceptable, desirable, not taboo. All of the words, these are often the people that can make things start to move and get them put into motion, I guess is one way to say it.
I like that way of you saying it there. I do think that they have a lot of options and it's a heavy role to play. One of the key things that I couldn't stop thinking about is the difference between mentorship and sponsorship and the ways to build your own personal support network. So, over the course of my life, I've had several mentors. I've had mentors in my career, mentors while going to college. And I even speak on mentorship and what that might look like for people and how to be a mentor. And one of the really big key pieces of mentorship that I think about is that a mentor is someone who shares their life experiences and stories and listens to you as you share yours, but you get to decide what information is relevant to you and what you get to take, kind of away from that. So a mentor might be somebody that's in the same line of or the same career path that you are, or it might be somebody totally different. It might be just somebody you look up to. Now, one of the key phrases we heard was that women are often over mentored and under sponsored. Now, sponsorship was a new term to me that I had not heard of. So, hearing about mentorship, they're usually somebody that's maybe a level or two above you, or somebody that might be in the field or might not be. But it's that they take questions that we ask and answer them, or we listen to their stories and we take what applies to us and looks at how we can make that. Now, a sponsor is somebody maybe in our career path who's two or three levels above us in an organization. These are the people that are actually at the tables making the decisions. And the reason that sponsorships are so important is because these are the people that can bring our name into a room where the decisions are being made that we might never have been invited into before. And so, what I want to think about is more people know how to mentor, but do the leaders in our own lives really know how to sponsor?
I noticed you writing when they were talking about this because I was also writing just as fast. And I just had these thoughts and I'm going to share them and maybe put them to all of you who are listening. And this is one of the key questions for me. Who are those decision makers? Who exists in the places where I spend my time, whether that's employed or in other types of organizations? Who are those decision makers? How can I find them? Right. So I'm thinking about for myself, who are they and how can I find them? But also, am I someone who could be a sponsor for others? And it made me think that workplaces and organizations need to have systems in place to support the success of the members, of the community, of the employees. And there are just so many different ways that I was thinking about this, but I was actually thinking about one of my roles, which is sitting on a governing board as a president. And there is a person that I would really like to sponsor in their career. And it's a person who, because of several factors, often needs to think about something a while before they speak. And that's not typically the culture and the climate in a room where decisions are being made. You know, we are talking, we are sharing, and the action is happening pretty rapid fire. And I am thinking about this person and ways that I might sponsor them by number one, bringing their name to the table, bringing their name to the room, but also I'm looking for opportunities to invite them into the room and then create a space for them to speak where I think it might be more comfortable to speak. And I thought about this a lot as we were sitting there, Amy, because one of the things that was mentioned was really thinking about the culture that you're in as a woman and ways that you can shift the culture. And a really simple way to do that is to amplify the voices of other women, right? So if you're in the room and you can create the space for someone to speak or the invitation for someone to speak, to look for ways to be that person that can do that. And then lastly, just one quick thing we heard in that same context, which was often when a woman speaks in the room, it's brushed off or quickly moved past. And so if you're in a position where you could amplify their voice so that it is heard, to grab that opportunity and do that. And so I felt like I needed to say that because that's what came to mind as I was thinking about not only who could be a sponsor for me and how we might all look for sponsors, but also what would be important if I was to embrace that role of sponsorship.
That's really interesting. And thinking about that too, it also led to kind of a two-part thought. One, specifically thinking about sponsorship, was the thoughts of who in your own life are setting themselves apart and to kind of deserve your sponsorship, Or also, what are you doing in your own life that sets you apart to have your name on those that are potentially able to sponsor you? And then there's this other shift and this other term that I heard that was new that really got me thinking, and that was board of directors. And yes, board of directors is a very general term. We hear about board of directors for businesses and things like that. But what about the idea of a board of directors for ourselves? And the idea of that we get to choose and create from those that are mentors, those that are sponsors, those that play important parts of our lives. And we get to kind of create this board of directors for ourselves. These are people that are willing to take us and amplify us. I like that word that you continue to
Mhm.
use there, to make us the best versions of ourselves. These are the people that are willing to ask us the hard questions, to think about things differently. And also, these are the people to really let us shine and put us in a position to have us shine.
I love, love, love that. And really think about all the people in my life who have given me advice over the years or who I've gone to cry on their shoulder or whatever it is, and who might be that board of directors and calling them that, literally giving them that title, my board of directors, I think just also elevates the value of what they're giving to us. And could even make us look at them in new ways. And as I think about that board of director concept, one thing that is striking me in this moment is this sense that I had when I was listening to the panel. I'm sitting there in this room, I'm looking at them like they are a living example of this concept. They're sitting on a stage in their chairs, and they could be someone's board of directors. But they didn't all have the same ideas or the same opinions. And I loved that it was okay for them to offer these differences. And I think that is the beauty of this idea of board of directors. When you leave your bubble, and for you and I, Amy, often that bubble is the early childhood world. And we left that bubble to go to this event in Washington, D.C. And when you leave that bubble, you hear new ideas, different opinions that you hadn't necessarily heard or considered before. You get to try new things. And as you do that, you're stretching yourself and you're growing. And it's not that they're in competition with each other. And it's not that they're even arguing or fighting. Like this is a space where it's okay to say, that's a great idea. And here's another one. Here's a different one. And one of the things we did like maybe slip into in our walking conversation was the idea of removing but and adding and to that space in our vocabulary, which, maybe we should have a whole podcast on that too.
Sure.
But as we allow that stretching to happen in our lives, I think that we get to grow into a more authentic version of ourselves. And we get to become more comfortable standing in that self wherever we are, whatever it is that we might be doing. And I loved that this day challenged us to think more about what it means to be our authentic self in whatever space we're in, instead of this is Cheryl as a mom, and this is Cheryl as a professor, and this is Cheryl as a president of a governing board, right? Like, why can't I be my authentic self in all of those spaces? And what could that look like? And I just love that I walked away with a potential shift in mindset of I am who I am. I don't need to copy other people. I don't need to copy the men that seem to have achieved these higher roles or whatever it is that you might be looking at. I don't want to suppress who I am. I want my authentic self to be completely present and evident in those leadership roles that I'm taking on. I just keep thinking about that and wanting to write about it to not let that memory slip, if that makes sense.
It does. What I hear you saying is you don't want to compartmentalize yourself, that you want to
Yeah.
be authentic and true to who you are in any situation, and that you don't have to worry that was that too much in this situation if that's who you are and how you show up.
Yeah, I don't want to compartmentalize myself. And I also want to be open to reimagining who I am as I get stretched and learn and grow. Yeah.
So, one of the things that was also really neat about this conversation is that there were individuals who were asking questions from the audience. And so, what we kind of took away was that one of the questions was that each of these women answered the question that what was one action do you think that will make the most impact in terms of elevating the value or the image of well being? And so if you want to hear what they had to say, you can certainly tune in and listen to that meeting. But I thought it might be helpful if we ask this question of one another. And what would we answer if we were sitting up there on that panel? So, Cheryl, what is one of the key things that impacts the term of elevating the value or the image of well being for you?
Thank you for asking, Amy. What a great question. Number one, if you know Cheryl or if you've listened to a few episodes of this podcast, one thing you might be gathering is that I hate to narrow anything down to one single answer. There's just too many things to love and too many things to try and enjoy in this world. And so please hear me say that one action I think that will elevate well-being isn't necessarily the only action that I would want to take or that would be an idea to take. But as I heard the women answering this question and just really was thinking about elevating well-being and changing the image of well-being and being able giving ourselves permission, right, to focus on well-being. I was taken back to another podcast that we have discussed before, Amy, and it was actually, I don't know if it was a podcast or if it was a YouTube recording of a conversation at a conference, but it was between Simon Sinek and Trevor Noah, and they were talking about the role of friendships and having friends. And in that podcast, one of them mentioned the idea of holding space with your friends in your calendar as valuable as appointments and people trying to secure your time. And I just loved that concept of being a leader in an organization and being able to say, I'm sorry, I cannot schedule that appointment for Friday because I already have a lunch with my friend. And I can't get that out of my mind. You know, the idea that our friends are our fishnet, they catch us, they support us, they give us our best ideas, I believe. And and so to be in any workspace where you can say, I'm sorry, I cannot do that right now, or I cannot do that on Friday because I already have a commitment to my friend, is such an excellent way of showing that your well being is important by virtue of valuing your friendships and holding that sacred and that time with them as important and just being able to say it to people. I just love that idea. And so that's my one answer today of elevating well being. Amy, how about you?
So I love what you just said on that. I feel like I need to kind of piggyback off of that real quick because I think it's so important that as you were saying it, that leaders and managers within their organizations think about that too and how to support their employees who are talking about seeing their friend or something like that. Because I think oftentimes we have been trapped in this mindset to say, oh, it's just okay, it's lunch. You can cancel on lunch. I need you here. And so I think knowing as the leader in the group, being able to hold space for that is really important. So for myself, one of the things that I always think, and it was a key concept I picked up on not that long ago, and I've tried to really live by, is whenever a situation arises, positive, negative, it doesn't matter. I have changed my internal dialogue so that with that, I ask myself, what am I supposed to take away from this? What am I supposed to learn from this? And who am I supposed to be because of this? And I have found that that really helps my well being. So that way, things are going to happen. They always do. But I get to be in control of how I take that information in. And I choose to take it in as a learning opportunity, even the bad things.
I love that. And I love hearing you tell me actual stories and experiences when you've done that and what some of the results of it are. So thank you for reminding me and all the rest of us of that opportunity to look at it that way. So as we wrap up today's episode, we have two challenges to share out with all of you. Amy and I often talk about our future selves. In fact, I think just yesterday, Amy, we had a conversation about thinking about future Amy as you make a decision.
Mhm.
And when we think about decisions that we're about to make, thinking about our future selves in mind. So I think this probably as a challenge would start with an internal thought process. And then you can decide if there's ways that you might want to share that out with us or with anybody else. But we're wondering if you would take on this challenge of creating your own board of directors. Are there people that you watch or follow or know personally in your bubble, outside of your bubble, that you might invite to be on your board of directors and play that role maybe a little more actively, where you can go to them with questions and use them for advice and coaching and all of the things that a board of directors might do. And so that is challenge number one. And again, think on it, put your thoughts down somewhere. And then if you'd like to share those out, we'd love to hear more about your process. The second challenge that we would like to offer is the question that we just answered for each other in a little bit of a way. And that is, what do you do to work on your well-being? So maybe there's one thing, maybe there's a couple of things that you'd be willing to share, to drop in the comments wherever it is that you're listening to this show, or even in our social media pages, where you could share your one or two or whatever number of things that you do to work on or to support your own well-being. And we ask this because we always are learning from each other and from others around us, and especially from reading. And so by putting it out there, others might gain insight or ideas to support their well-being. And so we leave you today with those two challenges.
Yes. And before we wrap up, I do just have to say that I have a sticker that I keep on the back of my phone. So I read it almost like an affirmation that says, do something today that your future self will thank you for. So
Ooh.
I do oftentimes think about my future self. So with that, thank you for tuning in to This Was Supposed to Be Easy. Remember, the best stories are the ones we live.
Join us next time from wherever it is we might be at that point, as we uncover more tales and thoughts that just might change your world while we navigate those things that we didn't expect to be so hard.
Stay curious, stay connected, and keep wondering. Bye.
See you soon.